Hello gentle viewers, and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Edith, and I like to show and tell my craft stuff to strangers on the internet, so thank you so much for being here. Today I'm attempting to make a wrap top inspired by Buffy Summers. It's Buffy! Last week I made a skirt inspired by the same outfit that I'm using this week, and now I'm planning to complete that outfit with the top. It's my first time ever sewing with stretch fabric, and it's been a struggle for sure, but it hasn't put me off. I never ever want to sew with stretch fabric ever again. Quick disclaimer, I am definitely not an expert, this is not a tutorial, very much still figuring things out. With that said, let's take a look at the outfit that inspired this make. At first, I thought that this top was made with a non-stretch fabric. I thought that it looked quite shiny, and you don't often see many stretch fabrics that are shiny in that way. I tried to have a look down the side of this top and I couldn't actually see any darts. So I think that probably it is made out of a stretch fabric because it is fitted in certain places, less fitted in others. I was really hoping to avoid sewing with a stretch fabric, but I think it's a stretch fabric top, so that is the one I went for in the end. The neckline is scalloped on this top, and I don't think I'm going to be able to cut a very good scalloped neckline. So what I think I'm going to do instead is use a scalloped trim to get that similar vibe without having to cut and finish a neckline in scallops in stretch fabric, which I think could be a bit above my skill level at the moment. The pattern I'm using for this top is by a brand called Quality Textiles. I've just taken the bit of paper out the front because, well, I unfolded it all. It's on normal, like, printer cartridge paper. It's really thick. I don't know how I'm going to store this one. They are based out of Berlin. I'd never heard of this brand before, but I found this pattern on Vinted for like a few pound, and it was just perfect for what I was looking for. So I got it and thought, we'll see how it goes. The fabric that I'm using is this stretch cotton jersey. It's 100% cotton and it has four-way stretch. It's lovely. It's a really, really nice fabric actually. I pre-washed it and pre-ironed it, but it's creased again now. But I did do those things. I'm also using this trim to get that scalloped effect on the edge. Season 2 of Buffy was the one where Cynthia Bergstrom joined the show. She did costume for Buffy between season 2 and season 6, which was the second to last episode, so most of the Buffy outfits are Cynthia Bergstrom's work. The year before season 2 came out, which was 1997, Cynthia Bergstrom actually worked on the Scream movie with Drew Barrymore and Courtney Cox and Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. I was kind of between sizes on this top, but some of the finished pictures that I've seen were very baggy, so I'm going to just go with the size lower, and I think that will come out better overall. I read a Tilly and the Buttons blog post to prepare for my first time ever sewing stretch fabric. The post recommended using sweatshirt fabrics, double knit, fleece as good options for knitting with stretch fabric for beginners, and this is my first time ever knitting stretch fabric. They specifically said lightweight jersey isn't a good option for beginners. I actually didn't read that until after I had bought the jersey. There is a good chance that I would have completely ignored it anyway. A lot of stretch fabric is knitted in its construction rather than woven, like the seersucker that I used last week. And what that means is that even though the individual fibres aren't stretchy, they're arranged in such a way that the textile, the overall textile that they create is stretchy. Instead of overlapping over-under threads, as in woven fabric, the overall textile is made as a series of interlocking loops, just like in normal hand knitting. This fabric is 100% cotton, and even though cotton fibres usually aren't stretchy because they're arranged in this way, the actual fabric itself is stretchy. As an example, I do have some knitting here. The individual yarn is not stretchy. That doesn't stretch very well. The overall textile, when those non-stretchy fibres are arranged in loops, is stretchy. There is stretch to it. So that's how a 100% cotton textile can be stretchy. There are, of course, woven stretch fabrics as well, but that's for another day. This fabric has been difficult to pin. It's been tricky to cut. I don't think it's going to be pleasant to sew with. First, serge the seam allowances, I don't have a serger, of the 2 necklines in both front pieces. Then press them 1 centimetre to the inside. Then place the front pieces on the shoulder, right sides together on the back piece, and close these seams. The Tilly in the Buttons post says that I don't need a serger to sew straight fabric, so I'm just going to use a zigzag stitch. That's what it says to use instead, a zigzag stitch. So I'm just hoping that works. I'm just going to muck about with some scrap fabric before actually sewing the garment. It keeps doing this bunching up thing where it's sort of grabbing the 2 sides of the zigzag and pulling them together, which is not great. I do own a walking foot and I'm thinking I might have to find out how to attach it. I sewed loads and loads and loads of different bits and bobs to try it out. They all went horribly wrong. The issue wasn't the walking foot, though I am still going to use the walking foot because that's supposed to be better for stretch fabric. I messed around with the tension. The bobbin was also telling me to get lost, so I just completely did a fresh bobbin with the thread that's up here, because I don't actually think the thread's matched. And I put the correct needle in. I also changed from the zigzag stitch to the lightning stitch, which I think is the stretch stitch on this machine. And it still didn't go great, but I saw that you can stabilise a stretch jersey by using tissue paper. I've got a lot of scraps of tracing paper left over, and I tried that out on here, and that came out the best. So that's what I'm gonna do with the lightning stitch on quite a narrow stitch as well, because I found the bigger stitches, they made that worm and texturising thing way worse. I just hope for the best, really. I've made the executive decision to not stitch the other one around the neckline. The reason being that the stitch that I'm doing on here, it's not replacing what an overlocker would do. But if I did a wide zigzag stitch on it, it would all pucker and look terrible. I just pressed under the other seam. It's not going to fray, it's not going to go anywhere, and also I'm adding this trim around the neckline at the end. I think I'm just going to press under and pin the neckline for now. I've got my back piece here. This is the right side. Whenever I'm using fabric like this reversible, I always draw a little W on the wrong side, just because quite recently actually I made 2 left legs for a pair of shorts by accident. Shoulder seams lined up, so I'm going to go pin and sew these shoulder seams. Top stitch the seam allowance of the neckline at 0.7 centimetres from the right side. What I'm going to do is take this trim and baste it on around the whole neckline, and then come back and top stitch that down, so attach that at the same time as I'm finishing off the neckline hems. The trims, when I bought them, all the different types had different names, and this one was called Edith. I'm just gonna take the basting stitches out. 10 out of 10 now, that has gone amazing. Continue with the front piece overlap, right front piece. Here you need to gather the side edge so that it fits between the 2 notches of the left underlap front piece. Distribute the gathering evenly. Gonna do a gathering hand stitch, just because I am terrible at doing it by eyeballs. I've just popped the top and bottom of the thread into the other piece of the shirt where the notches are, so between the 2 points where I need to redistribute the fabric. Otherwise I have to keep checking and looking, where are they supposed to be, where are they supposed to start, where are they meant to end. This makes it a lot easier. He's playing the find it game. I break his treats up into little pieces and then hide them around the house. I'm going to flatten it down with the iron and sew it up. I lost one of my needles, this one here, inside the pebble. I didn't even know that was possible. Place the ruffled front piece on the lower front piece according to the marking and pin it at side seams. Then sew the side seams together 0.7 centimetres wide. I'm noticing that knit fabric, or this stretch fabric, with its knit construction, knits, has the same tendency as stockinette stitch to roll. I've got to do all these bits at the bottom, pin them, and they look like parchment. Ow. I got so confused by this front wrap flap. So where the ruffle is, you line up the left flap, the right flap, and the back. So you have 3 layers. And then down here, I think you just catch one of the flaps, and then that seam goes back, ouch, goes back towards the rest of the top. So it's just the 2 that need lining up past the ruffle. It took me way too long to figure that out. It is an entirely new day, and I'm going to start it by following the instructions that told me to top stitch 0.7 centimeters away from the edge. It'll help keep it flat. It's gone well, but a few of the stitches jumped, like this one here. Is that in the light? If anyone knows why that's happened and what I can do to prevent it, please let me know. Next, serge the hem edge of the lower front piece and the back piece and press 1 centimeter wide around. Then top stitch the hem 0.7 centimeters wide. Press and pin. Press and pin. I am going to hand baste it. The reason is because I want to get a perfectly curved hem. I don't want there to be any corners in it. If I do it by machine first, there will be corners. I think pins probably aren't ideal for working with stretch fabric because they do mark the fabric. Basted. I much prefer this to using an overlocker. I find overlockers and zigzag stitches really itchy, so this is great. I'm going to do 2 lines of stitching, one at the very edge and then one to seal off the inside of these hems because I think it looks fancy. Sew the sleeves right sides together and serge the seam allowance and the hem. Press the hem edges at 1 centimeter inward and sew the sleeve hems at 0.7 centimeters. Finally, just sew the sleeves into the corresponding armholes and serge the seam allowance together. I've started putting the tissue paper underneath the fabric. I've just found it works a lot better, and I also had a small issue with the bobbin tray, what's that thing called? The bobbin mouth eating the fabric. So that's helped that out, and also it's easier for me to see. And once the paper is there, that's sort of holding them down for me, so it's really quite handy. I hemmed the bit of the sleeve that's supposed to attach to the top, and then I unpicked it, and then it's because I was really hungry. I was hungry, so I stopped for some lunch, and then I came back from lunch and decided to just cut another sleeve anyway, which, why did I unpick it? I was hungry. So I'm just repinning and re-hemming the correct part of the sleeves. Then I will attach the sleeves and come back. I'm getting my hair cut tomorrow and I haven't yet decided whether I'm going to get a fringe cut in or not. That's like how I get my kicks. Some people drink, some people smoke. I make spur of the moment decisions about my haircut. Final thoughts before the reveal. First of all, I should mention the sleeve was way too small. I sewed the sleeves on backwards. It couldn't have been a seaming issue, like where I'd taken too much out in one place and not enough in another. It was like 1.5 inches, 2 inches too small. They're backwards. Could have been me. Don't think it was. I did recheck the pattern piece. I cut the right size and everything. Backwards. How did I find my first time sewing with stretch fabric? I do see why an overlocker might be useful, but I'm not about to rush out and buy one. I think I actually really enjoyed the changes that I had to make because I didn't have an overlocker. My hem at the back, for example, is so much nicer finished like this, I think. I do also find overlocked seams and hems to be really itchy, personally, so anytime that I can try and avoid that, I'm going to do that. Before I did buy an overlocker, I would want to also learn more about what it was that an overlocker did that I couldn't achieve on a domestic sewing machine, because I would want to try and figure out as many ways as possible to solve those problems without having to get another piece of equipment. I don't think there's anything wrong with an overlocker, I just don't really want one at the moment. If anyone has any tips on how I can get a neat and not horrible lightning stitch without using the tracing paper to stabilise it, please let me know. I'm happy to use the tracing paper, I'm happy to use up my scraps, but I feel like there's probably a better way, and also I'm not looking forward to having to take all of the paper out from between the double lines of stitching that I've done on the hems. I still haven't done that, I'm putting it off. Anyway, here's the finished top with last week's skirt. You probably know by now about how I sewed the sleeves in backwards, but in the time between then and now, I also completely remade this top. I thought it had come out okay until I tried it on, and even though the sleeves were in the right way and the hem was nice and crispy, it just fit terribly. The neck was gaping loads, it was way too big, and then down the sides it was way too tight. So that could be that I pulled too much fabric towards the side, which then widened the neck. I would guess that's what it is. I tried to fix that top by doing some gathering at the back of the neckline to pull the neck up, but there was just too much that needed changing, so it didn't work. In terms of fit, the first one was 100 times better. It was actually comfortable to wear, it just had backward sleeves and the hems weren't very good. I had to take a break from this project. I've had a haircut. We are now 11 days post-haircut. We've put up 3 pieces of furniture in the house and completely reorganised. I've made next week's video, but I'm back. I feel like I might be ready, and I only have enough fabric left for one to have a final attempt at this top. I'm going to pick out the parts of both of the tops that actually went well, try to figure out why they went well, same process for why they went wrong, and then build on that. I'm also going to just change the pattern because there are parts of it that are just completely bad. Like the hem on the bottom of the flap is way too low. It's like lower than the rest of the hem, which in the illustration it shouldn't be. I'm gonna make some notes, have some thinks, and iron my fabric. I feel like I'm at the war table. Going to size up so that we've got a bit more room in the seams. I know that's not exactly how it works, but we're gonna roll with it. It's gonna turn out fine, I'm sure. I'm gonna take a little bit of fabric off of the underarms because that worked really, really well in the first one when I sewed the sleeves in backwards. Obviously that was a huge mistake, but it did fit me better with a little bit of fabric removed from the underarm. And also I'm gonna cut off like an inch from the bottom of the fold over flap. I had enough fabric, but I don't have enough tracing paper. I will make this work. I'm just going to follow the hemline at the bottom for the size below and then join up with the size above that I'm actually making past that point. In terms of things that I did like from each of the tops, the hems on the second top are much better. They probably are much better because I used hemming tape on them. So I'm going to do that again. I just soaked the top in a bowl of hot water after I had made it. Then I didn't end up with like horrible residue and stuff, but I know it's a risk with tape like that. In general, I don't really like to say that patterns are bad because that's still someone's hard work. And it's far more likely to be my fault that it's not going well than that the pattern is bad. But then I remembered that this pattern told me to only cut out one sleeve, so maybe it's fair to say it's a tad janky. I got quilting clips since the last time I attempted to make this top. They are much better. Brilliant for this job. Also, Anthony Head passed away, which is really sad. I'm pinning the shoulders, and then once they're sewn together, I'm going to pin everything how it would fit me when I was wearing it, including folding over and pinning the hem down around the neckline, and I'm going to try it on. Well, it's not perfect. It's workable. I'm going to take a bit of fabric out of the side at the bottom, so just carry on that reduction I made of an inch, half an inch on either side, at the armholes all the way down, and also lift the shoulders. So just do that shoulder seam a bit lower. There is far too much fabric in this area on this pattern. Yeah, it's a bit plungy at the moment, so hopefully that will improve it. I've clipped on my trim, and I've used the same amount of trim, or slightly less, than I used in the very first top, which I think is a very good sign. The flap is going left over right now. Don't worry about it. Hemming the flap. It looks awful. First issue with changing the sizes, where I had used the lower edge of the pattern piece in the size below so that I could have a shorter front flap, it has also shortened the amount of fabric that I've got to scrunch into the ruffle. I'm just going to improvise. My armholes are actually so small now, where I've taken material out of the shoulder seam and under the arm. I'm going to have to adjust them. I'm doing it, I'm just going to cut into the sides. I'm going to French seam the sides. I'm done. I never, ever want to sew with stretch fabric ever again. I sewed the flaps the wrong way around, and I didn't realise I thought all was going well until I finished the French seams. So I've chopped them down and I can't undo them. And it looks pretty bad, but you know. Also the sides, yeah, what's going on here? I'm so close to just giving up. It's not going to come out good. I don't know what to do. I really dropped the ball on this one, multiple times. In the end, I just smashed some sleeves on and hemmed the bottom so I could show you what I had done for this third top. I don't think Buffy would wear this top, because I don't think anyone would. As you can see, I'm more interested in showing you the bows that I made than the top, because I don't rate it. I used one of the bows to hide the area where I ran out of trim that was going to be hidden behind the front flap, if they'd gone the right way round. I've had some time to reflect on what went so badly with this top, and I've realised it was the seams. The first top, sleeves and stretched hem aside, came out the absolute best, and that was the top where I stuck most closely to the recommended seam allowance. When I sewed the second top, I thought, well, the seams on the first one looked a bit weak, let's make them a bit more secure, and ended up using more than the seam allowance by accident. Then, in the third top, I did it on purpose. I will sew with stretch fabric again, but I don't think I will use a pattern that explicitly needs an overlocker. There are loads of things that went wrong that I can't blame stretch fabric for. Stretch fabric didn't make me sew the flaps backwards, it didn't make me sew the sleeves backwards, and it didn't make me ignore the seam allowances when I knew deep down inside that I should not be doing that. Ultimately, I don't hate stretch fabric, but I am going to be avoiding it for a little while. Next week, I'm going to be sewing with good old reliable cotton lawn. I've got a two-parter coming up where I make a two-piece inspired by an outfit worn by Paige Matthews in an episode of Charmed. So if you want to see that, subscribe, and then it will be revealed to you by the hand of YouTube. Thank you so much if you have watched all the way till the end. Anyway, here are some awkward thumbnail attempt clips to see you off.